My name is Talia Monroe. I'm 31 years old, and until 2 weeks ago, I thought I had finally learned how to keep peace in my family. Be helpful. Be quiet. Show up. Keep my opinions to myself. Don't cause waves. Then I got a message from my mother. Hey, sweetie, Ryan and his family are going through a stressful time right now. The kids have been acting out, and we just want a peaceful Thanksgiving this year. Maybe you could skip this one. We need space. You understand, right? It took me about 30 seconds to read those 6 lines. It took me another 30 minutes to realize I wasn't even angry, just tired. Tired of pretending this didn't hurt. Tired of letting it happen again and again. Tired of never being chosen, never being seen. So I replied with one word: enjoy. They didn't know I had just signed the final ownership documents for a 17th century villa tucked in the rolling hills of southern France. They didn't know I had been renovating that villa for months in secret, slowly, carefully, piece by piece, just like I had rebuilt myself over the last 10 years. They didn't know I had a plan that would unfold quietly, gracefully, without shouting, without confrontation. They didn't know that within days I would be hosting a Thanksgiving celebration that would leave them wondering how they had missed it all. They didn't know they had made a mistake, but they would. Before I tell you exactly what happened, where it led, and how a single message changed the course of my family's dynamic forever, let me give you a little background. Because this wasn't just about Thanksgiving. This was about decades of being the one no one noticed, the child who didn't cause trouble, the daughter who was never quite enough. And this year, for once, I wasn't going to sit quietly at the edge of the family table. I was going to build my own, and only invite the people who truly saw me. Growing up, I was the easy child, the quiet one, the one who colored inside the lines and finished her homework early. I didn't scream for attention. I didn't rebel. I didn't break the rules. And somehow that made me invisible. My younger brother Ryan was different. He was loud, wild, impulsive. He broke things, he made mistakes, he dropped out of college twice, went through a rough patch with substance issues, and once totaled my dad's car and blamed it on the brakes. Everyone rallied around him. He's just struggling, they would say. He's under a lot of pressure, they'd explain. Let's not be too hard on him, they'd caution, usually after cleaning up his mess or writing another check to cover rent. I, on the other hand, learned not to ask for much. I knew it made things easier. I went to a local state university on a partial scholarship, worked part-time, designing logos for small businesses, and paid my own way without complaint. I moved out at 23 and never moved back. When I told my parents I was starting my own interior design business, they looked confused. My dad asked if that was a real career, and my mom offered to connect me with a friend who worked in real estate just in case. When Ryan got a job at a hardware store and kept it for 6 months, my parents threw a backyard BBQ to celebrate. When I signed my first 5-figure design contract, they forgot to mention it in the family newsletter. That was the pattern. Ryan got attention, sympathy, and constant support even when he made mistake after mistake. I got respect in theory, but little warmth. No real pride, just nods and neutral comments like, "That's nice, dear." It was subtle, but it was constant. The first time I brought a boyfriend home for Thanksgiving, we were seated at the kids' table because, as my mother put it, we had to make room for Ryan's in-laws. I was 30. The next year I brought a handmade centerpiece and 2 bottles of organic wine I had picked up from a boutique shop in Brooklyn. My mother placed the centerpiece in the laundry room and served boxed wine because Ryan's wife prefers it. When I got a small feature in a local design magazine, I excitedly sent my parents the link. My mother replied, "That's so cute. Oh, by the way, Ryan's daughter is in a ballet recital. We're flying out to see it." Every moment I tried to share, every little success I hoped would make them pause and look at me with pride, was met with a passing glance before they redirected attention to my brother. And I tried. I really did. I made the calls. I sent the birthday cards. I showed up to every holiday gathering with a smile and a casserole. I played with my nieces and nephews. I helped clean up. I listened. Even when my schedule was packed, even when I was exhausted. Even when I had just come off a week of back-to-back installs for clients and could barely stand, I still showed up. Because that's what good daughters do. They keep showing up, hoping that maybe, just maybe this time will be different. It never was. Last Thanksgiving, I remember watching as Ryan arrived 2 hours late, arms empty, kids screaming, and everyone greeted him like a returning hero. He spilled red wine on the rug, started a political argument with my uncle, and forgot his wife's birthday, which she whispered to me in the hallway between tears. By the end of the night, I was the one doing dishes, while my mother stood at the door with Ryan hugging him and slipping an envelope into his coat pocket. I never asked what was inside. I drove home alone that night, listening to the radio and trying not to cry. I remember thinking, next year maybe I won't come. But I did. I always did. Until this year. When they made the decision for me, they told me not to come. They used the phrase, "we need space," like I was some kind of burden. They said Ryan's family needed peace, like I was the cause of chaos. They didn't even call. They texted. That text didn't just hurt, it revealed everything. It pulled back the curtain. It said the quiet part out loud. I wasn't wanted. I wasn't important. And for the first time, I didn't fight it. I let go. That same afternoon, I walked into my tiny one-bedroom apartment, pulled out the file I had labeled Project Eluan, and spread it across my dining table. Project Eluan was my dream, a villa I had found 2 years ago while helping a client research properties in the Dordogne region of France. Stone walls, terracotta roof, olive trees lining the path, a fireplace that looked like it had witnessed generations of stories. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't flashy, but it was beautiful, it was quiet, it was mine. I had been working on acquiring it slowly, working with local contacts, navigating language barriers and legal red tape. I used the income from my design project's side commissions and a small inheritance from my grandmother to make it happen. 6 weeks ago, I signed the final paperwork. I hadn't told anyone. I was going to surprise them at Thanksgiving. I had printed photos and saved the listing, and even written a speech about how this was my next chapter. That text changed everything. They didn't want me at their table, so I would set my own. And this time, I would only invite people who truly saw me. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday afternoon while I was wrapping up a client presentation. My phone buzzed with my mother's name flashing across the screen. I expected it to be her usual pre-Thanksgiving check-in, what dish I was bringing, what time I'd be arriving, if I could help set the table like always. But instead, it was this, "Hey, sweetie, just wanted to let you know that Ryan and his family are really needing some calm this year. The kids are a bit overwhelmed, and we just want to make this Thanksgiving small and peaceful. Maybe you could skip this one. We need space. Hope you understand. Love you." There it was, short, polite, disguised in kindness, but it cut deeper than any harsh words ever could. Maybe you could skip this one. We need space. Hope you understand. I sat there staring at the screen, rereading each sentence like I was deciphering a foreign language. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as emotions flooded through me. Hurt, confusion, a flicker of rage, but mostly a strange wave of clarity. This wasn't the first time I had been excluded. It was just the first time they said it out loud. I thought about all the times I had been unintentionally sidelined. Last year, I offered to host Christmas Eve at my place in New York. My apartment was small, but I had decorated it beautifully and planned a cozy dinner. My parents declined, saying it would be too much trouble for everyone. They ended up spending the holiday at Ryan's house, where his kids ran wild, the turkey was undercooked, and no one helped clean up. When I got featured in a regional magazine for my interior work, I mailed them a copy. My mother never mentioned it. Later, I heard through my cousin that she had set it aside on the kitchen counter and used it as a placemat during lunch. When I sent handmade birthday gifts to my nieces and nephew, they never even sent a thank you message. When Ryan's kids drew a crayon picture of a stick figure labeled Grandma, it went on the fridge. So this wasn't new. This was just clearer than ever. I thought about all the roles I had played to stay in the loop: peacemaker, helper, extra pair of hands, quiet guest. The one who brought the matching napkins. The one who arrived early and left late. The one who knew when to stay quiet. I had done all of it in the name of family. And what had I gotten in return? Maybe you could skip this one. I looked around my apartment. On the wall above my desk was a print I had framed years ago. A quote by Audre Lorde. If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. I stood up, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. Then I opened the spreadsheet labeled Villa Elouan, Fall Opening. The idea had been a personal dream, a someday project, a way to build something of my own far away from the noise. Now it had a new purpose. I pulled out my phone again and typed my reply. One word: enjoy. Then I turned off my notifications and began making a new list, a guest list, not of people who shared my blood, but of people who had always seen my worth. The day after I sent the message, I booked a one-way flight to France. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't owe them explanations anymore. I had been planning to open the villa next spring as a boutique guest house. Quiet luxury, French countryside, a place for retreat, for pause, for reconnection. I already had the renovation team lined up. I had sketched mood boards for every room, but suddenly I knew I didn't want to wait. I wasn't escaping Thanksgiving. I was reclaiming it. Villa Elouan was mine now. Nestled on 3 acres in the Dordogne region, it had taken me almost 2 years to find the right property. It had thick limestone walls, honey-colored light tall windows that opened onto vineyards, and a view that stretched forever. It didn't feel like a second home. It felt like who I had always been inside. Quiet, grounded, enough. On the flight over, I filled pages of my journal with names. Not the usual family list, not the cousins who only talked to me through group chats, or the aunts who forgot my birthday. These were people who had seen me at my rawest and still leaned in. I started with B, my mother's younger sister, who had never married, never apologized for living on her own terms, and sent me handwritten postcards from wherever in Europe she was teaching that semester. I added Kayla and Jordan, 2 former clients turned dear friends. I had redesigned their shared studio apartment in the West Village 5 years ago, and we had bonded over chai lattes, antique lamps, and emotional exhaustion from being the responsible ones in our families. Then there was Sarah, my college roommate, who once drove 4 hours in the rain to help me recover after my first big client bailed on a contract. By the time the plane landed in Paris, I had a guest list of 12 people. 12 people who had never once made me feel like I had to shrink to fit. Over the next few days, I transformed the villa into a home. The interior was still rustic and bare-boned, but I brought it to life with what I had: linen tablecloths, candlelight wildflowers from the nearby market, and a few chairs borrowed from the neighbor's barn. I stocked the kitchen with both French staples and the ingredients I needed for a classic American Thanksgiving adapted to local flavors. Instead of cranberry sauce, I made a compote of red currants and spiced pears. The turkey came from a nearby farm. I planned a warm cider punch with rosemary and cinnamon. It wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. I emailed my guests with warm handwritten invitations. No pressure. No expectations. Just, I'll be spending Thanksgiving in France this year. If you'd like to join me, the table is open. Come as you are. The responses flooded in. B replied with, "My dear girl, I'm already booking the flight. How dare you try to host a Thanksgiving without me?" Kayla and Jordan sent a voice note screaming into the mic before laughing, "We're in, obviously." "Tell us what wine to bring?" Sarah's message simply said, "I've been waiting years for you to do something like this." It didn't feel like a backup plan. It felt like the right plan. For the first time, I wasn't begging for a chair at someone else's table. I was setting my own. And the people who said yes weren't showing up out of duty. They were coming because they wanted to. They were coming because, in their own ways, they knew what it was like to feel invisible, to be the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who got taken for granted. We were creating something new together, something that wasn't just a holiday dinner. It was a new definition of family, one rooted not in blood, but in belonging. The week before Thanksgiving, the villa began to come alive. The guest rooms were still a bit rough. Some mattresses were on the floor, and the walls smelled faintly of fresh plaster. But that didn't matter. There was laughter in the halls, warm bread in the oven, and candles flickering on the kitchen windowsill. It was more home than any family gathering had ever felt. Aunt B arrived first. She was exactly as I remembered her, scarves layered over scarves, bright lipstick, and a laugh that echoed through stone walls. She stepped into the villa, dropped her suitcase on the floor, and hugged me tighter than anyone had in years. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." I nodded, feeling tears prick behind my eyes. She looked around the room, hands on hips. "Let's make it beautiful." We did. The second day, Kayla and Jordan flew in from New York. They brought 2 bottles of champagne and a bag full of fabric samples, just in case you want some table runner options. Within an hour, we were rearranging furniture and draping lace over windows like we were setting a stage. That night, we cooked pasta and opened one of the local wines I had bought impulsively at the village market. We sat around the fireplace, eating off mismatched plates and telling stories about awful clients' exes we dodged, and times we cried in bathroom stalls just to get through the day. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest. And that made it magic. By Wednesday, the house was full. Sarah arrived with 2 French travel books and a pie crust kit. A friend of Aunt B's came too. Luke, a quiet poetry professor who brought hand-picked herbs and a bottle of absinthe. Then there were Ella and Noah, a married couple I had worked with on a Napa Valley property years ago. They had taken me in when I was between jobs, offering not just work, but home-cooked meals and their guest room. Now they were here hugging me like family. Even the neighbor, Madame Renard, brought over a wheel of cheese and fresh lavender from her garden. She didn't speak English, but her smile didn't need translation. Everyone settled in like they had always belonged. On Thanksgiving morning, the sun filtered through the trees in soft ribbons of light. The kitchen buzzed with motion, Kayla basting the turkey, Sarah peeling root vegetables, Aunt B making handwritten place cards in gold ink. The fireplace crackled. Jazz played softly in the background. Someone was singing. I stepped outside with my coffee barefoot on the stone path and looked out over the vineyard. The air smelled of rosemary and wood smoke. I wrapped my shawl tighter and stood in the silence, letting it all sink in. I wasn't missing anything. I wasn't excluded. I wasn't alone. I was exactly where I was meant to be. Around noon, phones began buzzing, one after another. Aunt B's first, then Kayla's, then Jordan's. Texts from my mother. "Hi, are you doing anything today? Just wondering where everyone is. We haven't heard from Ryan's kids either. Strange. Did we mix up dates I didn't answer? No one did. Not out of spite, but because this moment was not about that. It was about what we were building here." Later, Jordan turned to me with a grin. "Think they've figured it out yet?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "But I think they're starting to feel it." That afternoon, we sat around the long wooden table in the villa's dining room. Mismatched chairs, handmade napkins, candles in vintages. The turkey was imperfect, but golden. The vegetables were slightly charred, and the pie crust cracked in the oven. But everything tasted like joy. We went around the table sharing what we were thankful for. Most were simple. Silence, second chances, places that feel like peace. When it was my turn, I hesitated. "I'm thankful," I said slowly, "for being told to stay away." Everyone looked at me. Because if they hadn't, I continued, I might still be trying to sit at a table that was never built for me. Aunt B raised her glass. "To the woman who stopped asking for a seat and built the whole damn house." We clinked glasses. And I smiled, not with bitterness, not with triumph, but with the quiet peace of someone who had finally come home. That evening, as the last of the daylight faded over the vineyard, we gathered in the living room full and happy. There were blankets on laps, glasses of wine in hand, and soft conversation layered over the faint hum of French music playing from a Bluetooth speaker in the corner. Then my phone buzzed. It was a call from my father. I didn't move to answer it. I just looked at the screen. A moment later, Aunt B's phone lit up too. Then Jordan's, Kayla's, even Sarah's. All different numbers. All the same name, Mom or Dad. They had realized. I took a deep breath and finally picked up. "Hello," I said calmly. "Talia," my father's voice was tight. "Where is everyone? We've been calling all day. Your mother's worried sick." "We're fine," I replied. "I don't understand," he said. "No one came, not even your aunt. The kids didn't answer our messages." And we saw something. Is that your house? There was panic in his voice, and something else, something new, uncertainty. Yes, I said. That's my villa, in France. There was silence. You're in France, I am, with the whole family. Not the whole family, I corrected. Just the part that wanted to be here. Another pause. Why didn't you tell us, he asked. I swallowed. My voice stayed even. Because you told me not to come. You said you needed space. So I gave you space. And I invited people who didn't. I could hear my mother's voice in the background, muffled but frantic. My father covered the phone for a second, then came back. This isn't what we meant, he said. We just thought, Ryan's family is going through so much and we didn't want drama. I'm not drama, I said quietly. I've never been drama. I've been invisible. That's different. He didn't respond right away. I could hear the weight of that sentence settle in. I didn't know he said it last. No, I agreed. You didn't want to know. Talia, he said slowly, we didn't mean to hurt you. I know I said. But you did. More silence. I hope you'll come home for Christmas, he said eventually. We'll make it better. I'm not sure I want to come back to a place where I'm always the afterthought, I said gently. I've spent years twisting myself to fit into your version of family. This year I decided to build my own. I see, he said. And I believe that for the first time maybe he did. That night after I hung up, I walked back into the kitchen, where the others were gathered around the table, now cleared of food, but covered in dessert plates and coffee cups. How'd it go? Sarah asked. I sat down slowly. They were confused, I said. Hurt. Surprised. But not once did they ask how I was, just where everyone else was. They still don't get it, Jordan murmured. No, I said, but maybe they will. Later, as we curled up on couches and the fire crackled low, Aunt Bee leaned over and handed me her phone. Check this out, she said with a smirk. She'd posted a few photos earlier, just casual shots of the table, the view, people smiling. Nothing boastful. But in the comments, someone from our extended family had written, "This looks amazing, so this is where everyone went." Another person had asked, "Does your sister know you're all in France without her?" I set the phone down. I didn't need to respond. The truth was out. Not as revenge, not as a statement, just as reality. We hadn't hidden it. We just hadn't invited anyone who didn't make us feel welcome. And maybe that was the lesson I had needed to learn for far too long. I wasn't obligated to show up where I was merely tolerated. I was allowed to create something better. And I had. The morning after Thanksgiving, the villa was quiet. A soft fog lingered over the vineyard. The stone walls held the faint warmth from last night's fire, and the scent of roasted herbs still clung to the kitchen. I woke before the others pulled on a sweater and padded barefoot into the kitchen to make coffee. Aunt Bee joined me soon after, her gray curls, a little wild eyes soft with sleep. Couldn't sleep, she asked, handing me a mug. Too much in my head, I admitted. We stood in comfortable silence as the kettle boiled. Then she looked at me and said gently, "You know you didn't just create a dinner last night. You created a shift." I looked at her, unsure what she meant. A shift, she repeated. In yourself. You're not waiting anymore. Not waiting for them to wake up or see you or invite you in. You claimed your place, and now they have to catch up or not. I nodded slowly. She was right. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about how I'd spent years hoping someone would turn to me and say, "We see you. We're proud of you." Hoping they'd notice the sacrifices, the milestones, the little offerings of connection I kept laying at their feet. And now I had stopped waiting. Later that morning, we all gathered on the terrace for brunch. There was warm bread, soft cheese, and honey from a nearby farm. People wore sweaters and coats and laughed as the cold air flushed their cheeks. We passed around croissants and mugs of cider. Ella shared a memory of her childhood Thanksgivings and how different they felt from this: less pressure, more presence. Jordan recited a few lines from a poem that made us all fall silent for a moment. Sarah read a letter she'd written, but never sent to her father, about how it felt to be the overlooked daughter. When she finished, she looked at me. "You gave me the courage to read that out loud," she said. "Thank you." I didn't know what to say. I just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. This was our family now. Not perfect, not bound by tradition or names, but by choice, by love, freely given. That afternoon, I walked through the vineyard alone. The air smelled of earth and stone, and the sun began to break through the clouds. I felt light for the first time in years. Not triumphant, not vindicated, just steady, whole. Back inside, I checked my phone. A message from my mother had arrived. It read, "We've been thinking a lot. Maybe we took you for granted. Maybe we didn't know how to handle everything. But we love you. We miss you. And we'd like to talk when you're ready." I stared at the message for a long time. Not angry. Not emotional. Just calm. Then I wrote back, "I'm open to talking. But this time I won't pretend everything was fine. If we talk honestly." She didn't reply immediately. That was okay. Some bridges don't burn, they just stay empty until both sides are ready to meet. That night, I sat on the terrace again this time, with a blanket and a glass of wine. Stars blinked over the hills. Behind me, the villa buzzed softly with dishes being washed, music playing low, and people I loved winding down after a long, joyful day. I thought about the little girl I used to be, the one who made paper turkeys in school, who practiced saying thank you, even when she didn't feel it, who kept showing up, even when no one saved her a seat. She was still with me, but now she had her own table, and it was full. If you've ever been the one left out, the one who's told we need space, the one who's shown up time and time again just to be overlooked, I want you to know this. You are not hard to love. You are not invisible. And you don't have to wait for anyone to choose you. You can choose yourself. You can build your own traditions. Set your own table. Fill it with people who see you, love you, and show up for you not because they have to, but because they want to. This year, I finally learned that. And I'm never going back. So tell me, have you ever had to walk away from something to find your peace? If you have, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded. You never have to beg for love. Just build the kind that doesn't make you ask. Happy Thanksgiving from my new beginning to yours.